think we're good. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram. All systems seem to be go. See if I can turn Ion off for us. There we have it. Have I got everything? I don't feel like I have everything. Yeah, I guess I do. Welcome, everybody. December 16th, 2024, episode 314. Welcome to Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and should I read my notes? For medium and small businesses on the planet. Ding dong, ding dong. Chrystia Freeland resigns as finance minister. This just came across my phone here as I was getting ready to go live. She's going to leave the Trudeau cabinet. She was finance minister for Canada, and the witch is dead. The witch is dead. So that's positive. That's positive. It's going to be interesting to see what the Trudeau shuffle will be before election, whether there's for sure there has to be a hot swap of Trudeau, but he's cleaning house. There were some other lesser ministers that resigned. But basically, this Chrystia Freeland, for my U.S. audience, has run the entire Canadian government. It feels like for a long, long time. She was the one that headed up the failed negotiations with Trump on the free trade agreement. I know. In Canada, we said that we won those negotiations, and as she said, because we lost less than we thought we were going to lose. Bitcoin last night. Let's just check it right now. Oh, wow, 106,237 right now on Bitcoin. I was going to say hit 106,000 as a peak last night, but it's already surpassed that. Terribly exciting. One driver, of course, is MicroStrategy announced that last week it bought another $1.5 billion of Bitcoin through its leverage play. Remember, I think the investment case right now for Bitcoin, I think what we all need to think about is that the institutions are chomping at the bit, and they're hoping that with the Trump administration, there'll be defined regulation that everybody can follow and understand, and then the real money will jump into Bitcoin, which hasn't happened yet. But MicroStrategy, a public company, is basically said, forget about my software business. I'm just going to borrow and money and sell stock to gain money to buy Bitcoin. And they created a hack for institutions to indirectly buy Bitcoin. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And ultimately that bubble will pop, but not yet. So it's up $106,000. Let me turn my phone off so I can pay attention to you. Wall Street Journal on the weekend had some fun analysis, I think, of various hedge funds and rich investors, smart investors, on their view of Bitcoin. So, for example, Larry Fink, chief executive of BlackRock, was once a proud skeptic of Bitcoin, calling it, quote, an index of money laundering, end quote. I like that quote. Back in 2017. And later rebuffing cryptocurrencies as something his clients weren't looking to buy. These days, Fink, whose company runs the world's largest Bitcoin fund, little turnaround there, says he's changed his opinion after studying the digital currency. He says Bitcoin is a legitimate asset that produces returns uncorrelated to traditional assets and hedges against currency debasement and political instability. Is that true? Is it uncorrelated or even reverse? Is uncorrelated the right word? I think what he means is negatively correlated, right? So as the stock market goes up, this will go down. As the stock market goes down, this goes up. But that's not true. Maybe it is just uncorrelated. Maybe it's just in its own little bubble. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world does. It doesn't matter what the S&P is doing. It doesn't matter what the U.S. currency is doing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter consumer sentiment or anything. Inflation. Doesn't matter what the inflation is. That maybe this is just going to go up and down like its own animal. Maybe he does mean, who am I to challenge Larry Fink on his use of finance terms? Anyway, so yeah, that's what Larry Thinks Warren Buffett, chairman of CEO, most famous investor in the world, as we know, of Berkshire Hathaway, has been a longstanding critic of Bitcoin. One of his most scathing comments about the cryptocurrency came during Berkshire's 2018 annual meeting when he described Bitcoin as, quote, probably rat poison squared, end quote. I love these quotes. This is what makes them so fun. The billionaire investor, he said he wouldn't take all the Bitcoin in the world for $25, and he didn't mention Bitcoin at the most recent shareholder meeting of Berkshire, probably because he wasn't asked. He said in email comments last week, though, that he's saving any discussion for Berkshire's next meeting when the shareholders will get a chance to ask him whatever they wish. He reaffirmed his critical stance on Bitcoin in April 2023, attributing the long-lasting crypto craze to Americans' strong gambling instincts. This comes down to this idea that we've talked about before, that there is no utility. There's no utility for Bitcoin, and therefore it is gambling. It's 100% supply and demand on speculation and dreams, and just like a rebellion against the US dollar, against the machine. So that's interesting that he points that out. Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase chief executive, never been a fan. 2017, he famously called the token a fraud, said he would fire any JP Morgan employee found trading Bitcoin for the bank in congressional hearings. He referred to crypto tokens as decentralized Ponzi schemes and suggested the government should close it down. And he maintains his personal skepticism of Bitcoin, even while the bank became a pioneer in adopting blockchain technology and agreed. Many people confuse Dimon's rallying against Bitcoin as being against the technology of blockchain, which Bitcoin is premised on or layered on top of. That's not true. He's been very much a bullish on the utility of blockchain technology, and in fact has been a leader at adopting that at Chase. And he's agreed to facilitate trading in some of the exchange traded funds that hold Bitcoin. Most recently, Dimon said Bitcoin is a useless, quote, pet rock, end quote. I've told you before, my use case on Bitcoin is that, or my investment case hypothesis on Bitcoin is that institutions will be plowing into that. I think MicroStrategy is proving that it's going to create a lot of demand. There is no more supply. Prices will go up a lot because of that, but it ultimately will go to zero. That's what's going to happen. Now, is that next month? No. Is it next year? No. Is it a decade from now? 20 years from now? I don't know. At some point, it's going to go to zero because it has no utility unless it becomes more and more common. What's the right word? Accepted in particular by governments. For example, if you start seeing governments en masse in large groups accepting Bitcoin as payment for taxes, well, that's going to be a big sign. That's going to be a huge sign. And in fact, there's a trend slowly in the US, in local communities and states, to start taking Bitcoin as taxes. This could be a game changer. But if it has no utility, which it currently does not, that means it's just speculation. It's entirely a bubble. It's entirely a Ponzi. As one of the hedge fund managers I just quoted said, it's definitely going to zero. It's not defensive, right? So I don't think that it's negatively correlated like gold is to inflation, to the value of currency. And it's subject to technological risk. The US dollar is not subject to technological risk. It's really, really hard to counterfeit US dollars at scale. You could, I mean, they don't take $100 bills where I'm from and other places because they're worried about counterfeiting, but at scale, you can't counterfeit the US dollar. The governments have done a really good job at cracking down on that. And so, is that the same with Bitcoin? Or is it subject to technological risk? Is it subject to somebody else taking over with a better idea, with better encryption? Can Bitcoin be hacked? It's an interesting question. At some point, it's going to zero, but to me, I'm not giving you financial advice, but to me, it's got a lot of legs to run still. Google CEO Sundar Pichai, Pichai. I looked this up on ChatGPT, asked how to pronounce that name, and it tells me the proper pronunciation is Pichai. I have no idea if that's true or not true. Now, this is last week's news, but I was away last week in Calgary in back-to-back meetings and late nights, so I didn't get you. And then I had some technological problems, so I didn't get you a bunch of live streams last week. We did one or two, I don't recall, but this is too important to miss. Google announced, Sundar, the CEO, announces that today I'm delighted to announce that Willow, our latest quantum chip. Willow has state-of-the-art performance across a number of metrics, enabling two major achievements. First is that Willow can reduce errors exponentially as we scale up using more qubits. So that's going to be spelled Qubits. So it reduces errors the more qubits you add on to this thing, which is a major milestone in creating quantum computing. Now, a qubit, the Qubits, you have bits for regular computing. Well, a qubit is a quantum short for quantum bits. So the more that they add on, the less the errors are. And where are we here? This cracks a key challenge in quantum error correction that the field has pursued for almost 30 years. In classic computing, so what are these qubits? So a bit, you've heard about 0, 1, that's digitization. Well, that's a bit. It's binary. Something is either a 0 or a 1, and that binary state in computing, it typically refers to either there's an electronic voltage or there's not electronic voltage in the computer's hardware. So that's a 0 or a 1. Well, qubit, a quantum bit, differs significantly from a classical bit in the sense that it is not a 0 or a 1, but it's also in a superposition of both states at the same time, simultaneously. It can be a 0 and a 1 all at the same time together, and that's the essence of quantum mechanics. Now, for those of you that are literal in language like me, it's not, I prefer to think of it not as it's a 0 and 1 at the same time, but rather they don't know what it is until they measure it. So it has a probability of being either a 1 or a 0 at the same time. It could be X% 1 and it could be X% 0, but until you measure it, you don't know. You don't know what that is. And so they confuse the language in my mind. But anyways, I think it's just about the probability. And also it can be entangled, these qubits, which means that that's a phenomena where the state of one qubit becomes dependent on the state of another, regardless of the distance between them. So this has a probability curve of being a 1 or a 0, but the answer to this depends on whether this one is a 1 or a 0, and that's entangled, and that becomes very confusing. So anyways, that's what they're doing. The more qubits they put on, the less errors they have, as opposed to the other way around, which for 30 years has been happening. And so the scientific breakthrough is exactly that. Second, Willow performed a standard benchmark computation in under 5 minutes. So they give the computer, this qubit computer, this quantum computer, a challenge, and it solved it in under 5 minutes, whereas today's fastest computer would take 10 septillion years. That's 10 to the power of 25 years, a number, as they say in the press release, that vastly exceeds the age of the universe. So the quantum computer does it in under 5 minutes. You throw it into your laptop, it's going to take it longer than the universe has been alive to come up with the same answer. I don't know if you can wait that long. The Willow chip is a major step on a journey that began over 10 years ago when I founded, this being the CEO of Google, when I founded Quantum AI in 2012, the vision was to build a useful large-scale quantum computer that could harness quantum mechanics, the operating system of nature, to the extent that we know it today. So this is going to, when it works, which, by the way, this computer's a decade or more away. Its error tolerance, although way better and improving the more qubits they put on, is still a long way away from where it needs to be useful. What else can we say here? Cutting to the choice. There are other scientific firsts involved in this result as well. For example, it's also one of the first compelling examples of real-time error correction on a superconducting quantum system. So that we already talked about. Here we go. As a measure of Willow's performance, we used a random circuit benchmark. Any team building a quantum computer should check first if it can beat the classical computers, which they did. Here's the point that I wanted to get to. So the performance against the classical computer is 10 septillion years faster. It's mind-boggling, says Google, because the number exceeds known timescales in physics and vastly exceeds the age of the universe. It lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in parallel universes, in line with the idea that we live in a multiverse, a prediction first made by David Deutsch. So the idea that we live, so basically what they're saying is this computer is so fast, it doesn't make any sense. These chips are so fast in computing things, in computing things, that it doesn't make any sense in our idea of the timescale of modern physics. Therefore, the only answer is it's not limited to our universe, that it's doing it across multiple universes, and therefore it proves the idea of parallel universes, because that's what this chip is doing. Is that true? I have no idea, but I think it's an interesting idea. But I do know this chip and quantum computing is going to change everything. It's going to change our businesses. It's going to change industries. And in particular, well, every industry. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. This is going to change everything. But let's talk for a second about security, crypto security, including Bitcoin. It will be huge, because can this quantum computer at this speed hack into Bitcoin and bring that Bitcoin to zero? Maybe. There was a post on X said cybersecurity and cryptography is at risk because quantum computers can break classical encryption, for example, RSA, and blockchain security, leaving companies and governments vulnerable to data breaches and cyber attacks. Cybersecurity firms relying on encryption methods must pivot to post-quantum cryptography or risk obsolescence. I'm working on a cybersecurity deal right now, or I hope that I am. Anyways, we're just kind of finalizing the terms, and I'm significantly wondering how this technology out 10, 20 years from now is going to change that world, because I think it will be substantial. Have you ever wondered how founders create a business plan when they have these new technologies, these scientific breakthroughs that really are going to change the world? It doesn't have to be the proving of parallel universes, like in this case. But I'll give you an example. I was working years ago, maybe decades ago, as I recall, with a fellow who was a leader, one of the global leaders in UAVs, in drone technology. And he was manufacturing UAVs in his shop. He was providing services with the UAVs, and this is long before anybody was into this business of providing services. And then when you talk to this entrepreneur about the business plan, it was everything. It was everything under the sun. This is a new technology, and it's going to impact everything. We're going to manufacture these UAVs, and we're going to sell them. We're going to sell them to military. We're going to sell them to commercial. And we're also going to build them for ourselves, and we're going to provide a service. We're going to monitor infrastructure, and that could be cell phone infrastructure, pipeline infrastructure, large building infrastructure, things to reduce the human need to go out and see what the hell's going on. We're going to do it for mapping. We're going to use it for geological exploration. It just goes on and on and on and on. You just list everything that you can possibly use a drone for 15 years ago, let's say. How do you make a business plan out of that? Like, every one of those possible markets, manufacturing to military, manufacturing for commercial, providing it as a service to commercial, providing it as a service to military, within the service to commercial, whether that be telecommunications, energy, these vertical markets, they all have different sales cycle. They all have different use cases. They're all willing to pay a different price, right? Because there's different value to them. It becomes an unworkable business plan. And as an investment banker in the world, or venture capitalist, you just deal with this problem all the time whenever there's new science, because the entrepreneurs are really unable and unwilling to focus on one or two things. And you just see this over and over and over again, and to create a plan out of this abundance of possible opportunities. And I'm seeing that right now. I see that in the crypto space. I see that in cybersecurity, like everything that involves new science has got this issue. So I've been working on a model for my content, not for my own business here, to help entrepreneurs, inspired by Elon Musk, because this is exactly what he's doing. And I mean, and who is better at both reducing everything down to first principles to execute, but also at the same time being persuasive and interesting and being able to sell these massive ideas. What a mix. And I think that's why he's so successful. I put a post on X yesterday. It said, is Elon Musk interesting and persuasive because he's uber rich? Or is he uber rich because he's interesting and persuasive? I don't know him, but I have met several of his current and former employees in different ventures. And when you talk to people that have worked for Musk, I mean, they're burnt out. They talk about chaos. They talk about all sorts of craziness. But the one word they use is thrilling. It was a thrilling experience. Why is that? Why is it thrilling to work for him? So yesterday, I worked on a framework to help guide entrepreneurs. It's a draft. This is a draft, but I want you to think about this. Give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think. I call it the Elon Musk so far. I call it the Elon Musk reductionist framework for dedication, persuasion, and execution. So dedication meaning, why is it when you go to work for Elon that you're willing to work 20 hours a day when you're only willing to work 10 or 12 hours a day for someone else's company? What is the commitment factor there? Is it because he threatens to fire you? Is it because he's working along beside you? Or is it because there's a mission that you are so thrilled to be part of that you're excited to put in those hours until you kill yourself? So that could be dedication, could be commitment. Maybe I'll change that word. Persuasion, the first thing is about getting attention, and doing something global for humanity certainly does get a lot of attention. And execution, because at the end of the day, you can have all these big dreams about changing everything in your industry, in every industry with your new science, but you have to execute. So this is the reductionist framework for dedication, persuasion, execution. And it starts at the top. Think of a flow chart sort of going down. Starts at the top with the big why. So he sets, in my mind, a big why at the very top, which could be called at the top of this flowchart, which could be called, critical global challenges or humanity challenges. And an example for that would be humanity needs to be a multidisciplinary species because we're going to go extinct, because that's what history shows on this planet Earth, that there will be a meteor or there will be something that wipes us out. And that's going to be a problem. We're going to go extinct. So if we're multi-planetary, we will diversify our risk. And that is the big why for what I want to do. So he starts at the top layer with that problem. I'm not saying that that's the beginning of the business plan. I'm saying that's the top of the funnel to create excitement, dedication, persuasion, and then reduce that down to businesses for execution. And if you're an entrepreneur faced with new science that is applicable in multiple industries and applications, and you're struggling to put together a focused business plan, this is a good place to start. I do not think that whys, they always tell you in people's content and business books that, you need to have your why. That's not for everybody. If you're an auto parts manufacturer in Ohio, and you're third generation of a family business, a tool and die shop, a stamping operation, you don't need a why. You're just trying to run your business, feed your family. I've always found that not applicable to you, but certainly in this situation. By the way, some people are really motivated by their why. I'm not saying don't have a why. I'm saying if you're working in a traditional business, you don't really need a why. But if you're in this new science, or if you're looking to create commitment and dedication amongst your employees to persuade people, the why really helps on that front. So the big why: save humanity. The big dream: this would be the audacious goal. Okay, humanity needs to be a multi-planetary species. Why don't we set up on Mars? Let's go to Mars. There's our big dream. So big why flows to the big dream, which puts together sort of the big action plan or idea or dream that would approach, that would start to deal with the big why. And that feeds down to the big mission. Okay, so it turns the dream into a mission. So the example would be, okay, we want to save humanity. We want to be multiplanetary. Let's say Mars is the issue. Well, what do we need to do? We need to create starships to travel to Mars. We need to set up a base on Mars to colonize it. And that base needs to support about 1 million people. That's the general big mission. Okay. And then you turn your big mission into business mission. So I got big why, big dream, big mission. Now we've got business mission. Breaks down the big mission into manageable business missions. So for example, to do all the big why and the big dream and the big mission, we're going to need rockets that go a long distance and carry a heavy payload. There is a mission for a business. We're going to need robots. Clearly, we're not just going to send some humans there right away that are never going to come back. We're going to send autonomous robots. And so we need robots that can operate autonomously. There is a business mission. For all that to happen, we're going to need artificial intelligence. The rocket ship with the payload needs to be self-driving. The robots need to operate on their own for a while, and then they need to come back or communicate back what happened, right? And so that's an artificial intelligence business mission. And so now you've broken this down into different missions. And then with each business mission, you have a company. SpaceX builds the rockets that are going to carry the payload. Tesla, which is about the artificial intelligence and the robots. X, which is about the artificial intelligence. And each company, each business then breaks down into an operational vertical integration. Excuse me. Operational vertical integration, which, by the way, services multiple big whys, because he doesn't just have one big why going on. So where are we? We got the big why being multiplanetary species. We got the big dream. Let's go to Mars. Humans should live on Mars. We got the mission. Got to get there with rocket ships and a payload, and we need to set up a base to sustain 1 million people. We got that broken down into business missions, being a business for rockets, a business for robots, a business for AI. That leads us into the businesses themselves: SpaceX, Tesla, and X. So they're all sort of related, as you will often see in the Wall Street Journal complaining about that, but it's because they all service a big why. And then you break that down, like you break those businesses down into actually vertically integrated operational units. And every one of those units services multiple big whys. And what does that do? It diversifies risk. It creates multiple revenue streams, which creates what's the right word? Different value drivers for the business. So these operational vertical units, for example, SpaceX launches satellites for customers. There's an actual business. They make a bunch of money on that, and it launches its own satellites to create global coverage. Tesla has self-driving cars. Why? Because the spaceship's going to be self-driving, but also to capture data. Big deal, capturing data for the artificial intelligence business. Social platform X is to capture data for the artificial intelligence business, as we've discussed before. And you know that X is the only really AI that owns its data. Everybody else is stealing data, scouring the internet, stealing stories from the New York Times, getting sued for it. Not X. X owns its data, and that's a big deal. And as I said, every one of these businesses and operational vertical integrated units services big Y. So for example, X, yeah, it has data for AI, but it also services the big Y of free speech, which is also to save humanity. Maybe that's a big dream. I'm not sure. There's a big Y above that. And Tesla tackles climate change. So you've got these multiple flowcharts going down of big Ys, and they end up in vertical units, vertically integrated operational units that service multiple things and therefore have different revenue streams. And the whole thing is super compelling, and it is thrilling, as the employees say. And then your vertically integrated operational units boil down into attacking everything with first principles, which is a bottom-up thinking on the science, on the engineering. Bottom-up thinking and first principles means that you ignore all assumptions of what everybody else is doing, and you just start with fundamental truths. And so you just keep reducing. You start with the big why, right? And then you reduce that to the dream. And you reduce that to the big mission, which you reduce to business missions, which you reduce to businesses, SpaceX, Tesla, X. You reduce that to operational vertical integrations, and then you reduce that to first principles, which is really gets down to your execution. And what you have done is you've taken this scientific think, like where entrepreneurs get stuck on, hey, here's new science and it applies to everything under the face of the earth, and I can't come up with a business plan. Well, this is a way to do it. Not only do you come up with specific plans, but you've created a dream along the way, a narrative. It's narrative thinking, and narrative thinking is persuasive. It attracts people. It generates momentum. Momentum attracts capital. It attracts great employees. It's a different way to think about things. Now, like I said, I just came up with this yesterday. I was playing around for a couple hours thinking about this on my whiteboard. It's draft. It's a draft. If you have comments, if you have thoughts, if you think I'm wrong, I'm prepared to accept that. I'm going to release this somewhere. Maybe I'll put it on LinkedIn and start a discussion if anybody wants to chat about this. Let's not take it as content yet. Let's take it as a thought experiment. And but I think it'll help. I think will help. This has been Mornings with Scott. Happy Monday, December 16th. We'll see you tomorrow, 8:30 Mountain.